All right, the next question is from Breeze, which this is who the F is Breeze, and he says, should 2K go back to the no archetype system? I think, yeah, we have actually talked about this before, and I am certainly of the belief that they should go back to that. I just feel that there was more variety to the players without the archetype setup. I feel that there, you know, in basketball, you need that individuality. And as of right now, I know the way Books looks at it is he wants to create the individuality with the stick skills, and he wants to create these scenarios where the eliteness of a player is shown in their ability to do certain things on the sticks that other people cannot do. I like that, but I also I like that. I think that we arrive at it in two different ways, though. I feel that there are ways to build your character up free of an archetype system that will convey that same thing, and it will then give you a reward based off of your skill level that then makes your player physically capable of certain things that other players are not. So then it's a compound effect. And then that's when you start to get an opportunity to see the Kevin Durant's and the LeBron James type figures in a 2K environment because they're able to do different stuff. So I think I don't know. I think Nelson would say he doesn't need the archetype system. I'm not sure.
No. So here's the thing. Archetypes are just characters, right? Mm-hmm. So when you go to a game like Overwatch or a game like Rainbow Six, and you have a character or a specialist, they are a group of abilities, and they give them a name, like Genji or Tracer or what have you, right? And in the NBA, they don't get actual names. In 2K, they get names. Their names are playmaking, shot creator. That's the
right,
name, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still just a character.
Right.
So you guys are saying you want a competitive game where all of the abilities are laid out in the flow chart, and you can pick relatively what you want and not have specific characters. If people did that, they would combine the best 3-4 combinations, and that combination would dominate the meta. So you can't have it be that open-ended. So what you need to do, I think there's two basic ways that 2K can do this. They can either add a tertiary archetype. And what a tertiary archetype adds is a small amount of skill you can apply to one area. So say, for instance, if two people have a shot creating playmaker, right? One person can spec into more dribbling. One person can spec into more athleticism. One person can spec into more shooting. 90% of the archetypes are similar, but that little bit of extra that you add gives you the ability to play with a little bit more uniqueness, right? And maybe you can add it into defense as well. So, and I think this would also give the defensive archetypes a better role, because as it is, unless you go a defensive archetype that's basically bad at offense, you might as well not even use it because it's not strong enough. Same thing is kind of true with the three-point shooting to the degree. Unless you use the three-point shooting to sprinkle onto an already good offensive build, you might as well just make a dominant three-point shooting build so that you get the shooting all the way up. If you had a little more flexibility to stack your skills up, that would solve it. So the third archetype allows you to do that, or to give you what they would call masterwork skills, right? So if you could masterwork one skill in your archetype tree that has to do with your primary archetype, that would also give you the freedom. So for example, let's say you had a pure shot creator. Me and you both have a pure shot creator. But again, you're going to masterwork your dribbling. So you have so now you're Kyrie Irving, right? I'm going to masterwork my three-point shooting. So I'm James Harden. But we're both very similar. Neither one of us is a good defender, particularly. Neither one of us is the best athlete in the game. But we both can be the same but different without changing archetypes. You can also do that with your split archetypes, is to add that masterwork system. The reason you need to gate the skills off, gate the individuality off with skill, is because that keeps it balanced. If you gate it out in the game, in the meta itself, the community will 110% every time break your balance. And only 3 or 4 combinations of what seems like a wide open field will be good. And it'll actually be less creativity than what we have now, because all of those potentialities will not coexist. It will only be the very best things that exist. And this has happened in virtually every competitive forum ever, where they've opened things up too much. You get a broken game.
Yeah, I think that I definitely think it's more challenging to develop a game in that area, because what has to happen is you have the balancing, the task of balancing falls on the developer, and the balancing that they have to do is they have to balance out the skills as opposed to kind of policing you, right? So they have to balance out, they have to make sure that a player who is great at going to the basket and is a great ball handler and is a great rebounder and all, they have to make sure that all of those skill sets are equally, or I shouldn't even say equally, because everything's not actually equal in real basketball, but all of those skill sets are as important as they should be in the flow of a basketball game. And I think that that's where the real challenge is in doing that, because if you can do that, because here's the thing, my concept is it doesn't matter if you want to make Kevin Durant. You would, in my concept, not everybody would ever be able to attain that, because it's going to take a certain level of skill in order. It's not just about grinding. So, because if it's all about grinding, then yeah, everybody will sit down for the requisite amount of time and they'll do what they got to do in order to get these badges or to get their ratings up to a certain amount, to a certain place. But if you can only get there by showing a certain level of excellence in, and not a certain amount of time, a certain level of excellence in the evaluation period or in the training period, that's the only way you unlock these things. If you're able to do that, then now, yes. So to me, it gets to a point where it's not even about stagnating the creativity. It's about forcing people to be better, to be great at the game if they want to have a great character.
Well, see, and here's the thing. I feel like what makes people great at the game is competition. So 2K's biggest issue is balancing the offense and the defense, not the archetype system. They're like, for instance, your teammates are brick walls as screens. That breaks the game more than the archetype system. Because what we see in the 2K league, with people wonder why they play the way they play, when are we going to see real plays? You can't run real plays because you can't run past your teammates. Their hitboxes are too big. That's the kind of stuff that has to be fixed, because what happens is when that gets fixed, when the motion system gets fixed, when defense gets fixed, you create more dynamics in the gameplay. It's like we talked about with the division. The game is more dynamic. That's why I find it so satisfying, because the engagements have more ways that they can happen. With 2K, because of the way the screens work, both teammates and the opposing people, because of the way speed isn't really a factor in the game. Fixing speed alone completely changes the game, right? Speed is bad in the game. For some reason, really slow players can catch up to really fast players almost no matter what. I saw Zubac in my career catch up to, oh my God, who was it? It was like a really fast player, like somebody crazy, like Westbrook, I think it was. Like he was chasing, yeah, it was Zubac chasing Westbrook. And he caught up to him in the open court.
Yeah, I mean,
like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, what you guys are saying, I get it. But what you guys are saying would be even more broken if 2K doesn't address the sandbox first. They have to fix the sandbox. And I think what they can do to make the sandbox more flexible, to go back to the masterwork thing, if you want it to be skill-based, just have the masterwork be unlocked in each individual game mode by wins, right? So after 200 wins in the park, you get masterwork, whatever, one masterwork ability in the park. Same thing for Pro-Am / Rec Center, because they're the same game mode. The same thing for My Career. You don't get it in My Career and then bring it over to Park. No, you have to earn your stripes against the competition relative to that mode. I think that would allow you to add that individuality through skill, because you can't grind out 100 wins against people, because they're people, right? You have to beat them. It's not a given like it is against a CPU. And what that does is that makes sure that people actually are skilled, and that you didn't arbitrarily put out something that's eventually, once one person figures out the trick, it goes up online and everybody knows the trick. Now everybody has it in your sandbox is running.
Yeah, no, I don't think I don't think that you have to going that route. And I'm not even sure that the person that asked the question, if Freeze is talking about the same thing. I'm sure he's not talking about what I'm talking about, because I haven't heard anybody necessarily go, use it or try to, repeat the idea or either come up with the same type of idea that I have for changing the entire archetype system and changing just my idea is to change the archetype and the progression system. But I don't necessarily think that that should be the case for just casual play. My idea is almost specifically for what I would call a pro setting that I think should be in my career or in the neighborhood. And I think this is to help to facilitate and to feed the NBA 2K League. I think you need a real division between the casual player and the competitive player from a objective standpoint, not just from because one of the things that, you hear most of the players talking about is when they played in the combine, not everybody that was there for the same reason. And you could tell by how they played in the way that they, not even the quality, just in the way they took the game, right? And I think that separating that would kind of help. And the idea that I have, which removes that traditional archetype system and changes the player progression and puts it all on skill rather than grind, I think that helps that. I don't think that it would break the game, because you're not going to see the same level of first of all, you're not even going to see the same level of engagement, because this is not a mode that's for everybody. This particular function is not for everybody.
But here's my thing though. In every other great esport game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Rainbow Six Siege, any of the fighting games, Overwatch, what have you, they're playing the exact same game that I'm playing. That's what makes it so amazing, is that I have a direct comparison.
But I think the difference is that this is where this is where I think we always disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you can base what 2K needs to do with their esports vehicle based off of other esports vehicles. And the reason being is because it's a sports game that has an actual real life comparison. The game itself is emulating a real life sport. And with that comes a certain responsibility to adhere to the rules and the regulations that particular sport creates. Overwatch doesn't have that same responsibility or task.
Quick second. So what rules of the sport are you talking about?
From a standpoint of realism, and even from a standpoint of what makes, so when you sit down and watch an NBA 2K League game, right, without even doing so on purpose, there is an expectation, right, that you're going to be entertained somewhat similarly to the way you're entertained when you watch an NBA game. You want to see the same types of things. You want to be excited by the same types of things, the same things that make you stand up in your seat and go, oh, and when you watch a real game, ideally, you would want that from an NBA 2K League experience.
Well, here's the problem. One of the most exciting games ever was the Michael Jordan flu game, right?
Great game.
That was awesome, right?
Great game.
But partially because he had the flu.
Right.
Digital players don't get the flu.
Yeah, but that's one instance.
No, but that's not one instance, because what does the flu do? The flu saps your energy and fatigues you, right? Physically. And yet you still have to jump over people. That happens during every game. Part of the reason LeBron James is LeBron James is because he physically didn't get tired the way other people got tired for most of his prime. He was just a complete machine. He just didn't miss games. The counterbalance to that is, say, Anthony Davis, who is probably roughly as talented as LeBron James overall, except in one key area, is that he's not as durable. Right?
See, I would.
So let me finish real quick. Without adding in-game humanity to it, the humanity of all esports, and again, this is no exception, all competitive games, is how you apply your mind in cooperation, team-oriented things, your personality, and your skills on the actual controls inside the dimensions of the game. That's what separates e-athletes, not some artificial in-game thing that says, I W an e-athlete, so you get to do this and this person doesn't get to do it.
See, I think you misrepresent the idea and the concept. And the flu example is a really an aberration and a stretch, because there's 50 million other really great, really memorable games that don't have a flu concept in it. And more so than anything, what made those games great, or what made those individual performances great, is that we saw somebody do something that not every other person was capable of doing athletically, from a physical standpoint. We saw somebody do something that made us go, "Oh my God!"
Well, but
and
here's
it
the
wasn't.
thing.
It was. Hold on. It wasn't. It wasn't a situation where the person couldn't do it simply because they couldn't put a stick command in within a certain little small stretch of time. And so now, because here's the thing, most people that are watching you and especially on a 2K League esport, right? This is a different type of a situation, because it's attracting a much less niche audience. Ideally, that's what you would want, right? They're not going to be as impressed with the fact that you can hit bang, 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 bang on the controller.
I totally disagree with that.
In 0.5 of a second, because I don't even know what you did, but I know what I saw. And what I saw was you dunked on 3 guys, they fell down, and I haven't seen that in any other game.
Well, here's the thing.
I haven't seen another character who could do that.
We agree on the problem. The problem is that the game isn't dynamic enough, and skill isn't displayed in the game enough. I don't know when something cool is happening if I'm watching 2K versus watching real basketball. And I think that's a problem. I don't think the solution is to artificially allow one player to have an imbalanced.
But that's what I mean. No, that's what I mean by
tool.
But that's what I mean by misrepresenting the idea, because you're representing it as if I'm saying you're arbitrarily just randomly throwing this gift on somebody. They're not throwing a gift to anyone.
Well,
every gift they got, they earned.
No, I said artificially. So what I'm saying about the artificialness of it is that you have a different tool than me. And that alone gives you different abilities.
But I earned the tool.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. It 100% matters.
Because the tool should be the skills. That's the tool.
In Overwatch, yes.
No, in every no. Video game. That's
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What competitive video game do the players have different tools?
What competitive video game that's a sport can you compare this to? I don't want to hear no more comparisons to a game that's got magical characters that people jump out of the sky.
What's your precedent?
Because it's irrelevant to me.
What's your precedent, though? But what's your precedent?
The precedent is basketball, and because
this isn't basketball, this is video game basketball.
But it is video game basketball, and the people who are watching it want to derive the same type of enjoyment from watching this that they want to get from watching an actual basketball game. You're not pulling over a bunch of Overwatch fans. You're not pulling over a bunch of Street Fighter fans. You're hoping to pull over basketball fans, so that you have to impress them with the basketball that they see. You can't, honestly, a lot of people could care less about the freaking skill gap. They could care less. The casual fan could care less.
And that's where I disagree.
And that's where you're going to make your money.
Here's the thing. A basketball fan can look at any form of basketball and recognize an awesome crossover.
Exactly.
But hold on.
Exactly.
In 2K, there are no awesome crossovers.
You know why? Because everybody can do the same freaking crossover if you got that character.
It's because literally the input commands, and this is where you can't ignore the fact that it's a game. There is a threshold where how long it takes me to input something, how long it takes you to see it, how much time you have to react to it, where that meets up, and it no longer becomes a read and react mind game. 2K has dial and input, meaning you send the game an input, You wait. It starts to happen. And then the other person sees it. They dial an input. And then you guys watch an animation for several seconds. When you go to a real esport, and this is why you can't ignore other esports, it's literally down to the frame, down to the latency of 1 frame or 2 frames that makes the difference between a competitive moment and a your game doesn't work yet moment. And 2K has, out of all esports attempting to be an esport, the most input latency, the most animation recovery, the most startup. So the idea that the archetypes is a problem before the startup animations, I'm sorry, B, is totally ridiculous. The crossovers in the game should work. You know what game has that it does work? Madden. A juke in Madden looks like a juke in football. You see a guy,
I don't think you would hear the same thing from Madden players.
You see a guy icon over to a cornerback, and some dude catches the ball, and he just gives him the left, right. He actually got fooled because the inputs are just quicker and better in Madden, and because they don't have to constantly control the players, because most of the players are controlled by AI. So when Madden gives you control, it can basically give you absolute control. 2K never gives you real control, and that is by far their biggest obstacle because the game never looks cool.
Well,
it never looks cool.
I don't think this was a debate about whether or not this was the biggest obstacle or not. So I don't say, and I don't mean to say that if you change or you take the archetypes out, then now you fixed everything. That's the furthest from.
And I'm saying if you fix speed, if you fix input latency, if you fix animation recovery, if you fix startup, you do fix mostly everything.
I still don't think you fix this particular aspect. And I think we're also talking about 2 different things. I'm talking specifically, almost specifically about 2K League play and people who aspire to play on that level. That's almost entirely what I'm talking about. And so I'm talking about what looks good to a fan, I'm not even talking about what necessarily feels good to a person who wants to play in this area. That I'm talking about to a fan, when you're watching the 2K League and when you're watching those games, the constant references to the archetypes and then the limitations that this person has and that person has in basketball, that's a turnoff. Because that's not how basketball is played.
But here's the thing:
that's not how basketball is played.
And this is your idea is completely theoretical. That they're supposed to bring in this other audience that doesn't like video games.
That's just business. You can't depend on a business model like theirs cannot depend on a hardcore community that is at best 40 to 30,000 people.
Well, see, here's the thing. It's only 40 to 30,000 people because they're ignoring the 10 million people playing 2K. Like, literally 2K.
The fact is that not all of those 10 million people are going to want to play Pro-Am.
Even watch Pro-Am. That's the difference. See, Overwatch, out of their very, very large user base, a significant percentage of just those people is enough to hold up the Overwatch League and have them have giant arenas in California and rent out the entire Barclays Center. You know what I'm saying? They can rent out the actual arena where the Brooklyn Nets play on the strength of only the people, the quote-unquote hardcore community. When you sell 10 million copies of a game, 20 million copies of a game, that's not a hardcore community. That's enough people to hold up your viewership.
But here's the thing. The variations in modes in Overwatch are nowhere near as diverse as they are in 2K. That's why 2K segmentation
that would only matter if it wasn't for the fact that 90% of like the 2K base is playing Park, Pro-Am, and My Career. Like, they talk about it all the time.
They are close. It's close to 90%.
My team
just named
Pro-Am and My Career.
They're playing My Career and they're playing Park. Okay, everybody else, My Career, Park, and My Team. Every other aspect of the game is splintered out. The bulk of the players play those 3 modes. That's been told to me by several people at 2K. So they're when you're playing Overwatch, for the most part, everybody's playing the same game. It's not that big of a variation. So then, of course, yes, it will be easier to retain a larger percentage of your audience, because what I'm showing you here is not that much different than what you play.
But 2K is not even close. 2K, they had that event, that pre-draft event. What was it, like 2,000 to 3,000 people watching?
It wasn't, when I watched, it wasn't even that many. It was like 1,800.
Right. So, and this is my point. Even among their hardcore community, they're retaining no one. And they're retaining no one because it's not cool to watch at all. And why is it not cool to watch? Because it is a super slow game. There was a point in that game where Dimes was dribbling, right? And they said, oh, guys are starting to dribble now, because the meta in the game has been basically just 5 out, don't dribble, just get threes and dunks, right? And now he starts dribbling. There was one point where he actually completely shook the guy in front of him, but he couldn't go to the basket because the game literally won't allow him to. Because after you shake somebody, the game makes you arbitrarily hesitate and stand in one spot before you can move forward. Literally. Just do a crossover and hold forward. You don't look like a real NBA player.
But
it's not cool.
I contend that I don't have I don't disagree with that, what you're saying, but I contend that if we're doing what I'm saying, you remedy that as well. Because it's all about individualism. That's what it's about. Dimes just put on a great individual move that would have allowed him to stand out. He would have just done something that made you go, ooh. But because the players are too similar, and
no, it's not that the players are too similar. It's that the whole game is too flat, because as my man said in the chat, the sports science in the game is bad. No one in the game is explosive. No one. It's like you're playing.
Is explosive enough to expose their individual gifts.
No, what I mean is, when I say they're not explosive, I mean physically in the game.
No, I know what you mean.
You can't chain animations to do something too fast for the defense to react. What you're doing is you're relying on the defense being carried into animations that they don't want. That's how you win in 2K. I'm constantly getting you to try to get sucked into an animation where you can no longer use your one tool to play defense. And what's your one tool to play defense? Well, actually, you have two tools. One, that after I do something, I can't move for several frames. And two, that recovery is extremely overpowered. And as long as you get within this giant circle, you can press the triangle or Y button and contest my shot. Right? So you have that tool, and I have the tool that if I can get you to be stuck trying to get your player to turn while I get into one of the faster animations, then I win. That's the entire basis of 2K. And as long as that's the basis of 2K, then you're going to have the problem. If you simply added the ability, if you just gave Dimes the ability to cross somebody over and get into the lane and make a layup, I know, crazy, mind-blowing that you'd be able to do that in a basketball game. He would be such a problem that his skills would separate him from so many people and force teams to change their defense according to him. It would add dynamism to the play. And until you do that, everything else is just putting a Band-Aid on an extremely broken competitive game.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't disagree with adjusting and even reworking gameplay aspects. But I think that there is absolute value to having someone build their character and build their character in a process that, you know, they attain these skills or they attain these abilities because of their my idea is too long to explain in this format. I've written about it before, so it may sound like I'm just throwing out a concept that doesn't connect necessarily because it's actually too big to fully explain in this place. You would know that I'm not actually saying that fixing these gameplay issues aren't that isn't important. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there needs to be a way. I don't like the character concept in a sports game that is an esport. I don't like the character concept because that is not how sports work. And If you want to make an esport that's a fighting game or whatever kind of game, then that's fine. Go ahead and do that. And there are certain rules to the balance that takes place in that environment that totally makes sense. But in a sports video game, let's make it a sport. Let's make it a sport. So that's just my take. Let's make it a sport. So, but we went way over on that one. I did not think we would. I thought we were going to get into the chat a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and check it out from there. But I appreciate everybody coming through as usual. And
this is what happens when y'all get us arguing over esports, y'all.
I'm telling you, because we see it differently. We see it the same in some ways, but we see it differently in many ways. I am definitely I'm more into the sport than the E. So
well, that's where we disagree, because I don't think you're choosing either or. I think what it is that when you give players the room to display their skill, an individual talent can really rise to the top. I think players are so special in those skills that you can give to people that's the tools that should theoretically be the same, and it's totally different. And it's just a matter of making the game great enough that those things manifest in different ways. So we use the example with dimes, but I'm willing to say, let's see what we can do about an athletic archetype that's like that. Let's see what we can do about a shooting archetype that's like that. What about someone who plays an athletic archetype, but the way they use their limited skills in other areas makes them feel like they have everything?
See, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem. That obviously that just makes the game play better. That's great. I think my argument is, how do you get to that place? You're okay with having a preset archetype that people choose, like a character. I'm not okay with that. I want you to earn your archetype. Whatever skill you have, you earn it.
What I'm saying works if you give people players that are 80 overall and they're an 80.
See, I don't want that though.
But
I don't want an 80 overall. I want a guy to be able to be a 99 if he's earned it.
And this is my point. If a guy is skilled enough, he can make the 80 overall look like a 99 compared to somebody who has an 80 overall and they look like a 65. But you have to make the game to support that. And when you say, how do you do it? I already gave you the answer. You need to relax on the startup, recovery, and input latency. It has to start there. And before we get off the subject, I do want to say, and this is an important thing in our esports argument, the reason the other games are more successful is not the fantasy element. Some of them don't even have fantasy elements, like Rainbow Six is fairly straightforward. It's not that. It's the fact that when I think something and then I put it in the controller and then it happens on screen, that has to happen at a certain speed. And then when you have something called counterplay, that has to happen at a certain speed.
But I'm not arguing any of that.
Real quick. But what happens is once you put that in, then you see the talent stretch from low talent to high talent. Then you can tell how your archetypes need to be made. The only reason the archetypes are handcuffing people so bad is because their tools are so limited that the skill gap in 2K is way too close. And as long as the skill gap is too close, because there's no read and react in the game, because everything is happening a full 2 seconds after the first thought was put into it, it's just too many frames between player action and player reaction. It's just too many frames. They need to reduce it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I see things all the time in the game, but yeah, that's not what I'm arguing at all. I just feel that if you're a 95 and this person's an 80, there's going to be certain things from an animation standpoint, from certain dunks that are being able to be performed, from how your sweet spot on your shot meter, all of those different things are going to be more available to you. But the key is that it's not being given to you. It's not like you just artificially, the way you earned it is no more artificial than the way you executed it, because in order to earn it, you had to execute. So I think that it's a philosophical difference, essentially, is what it is. I see it as clear as day how it will work. And I think that my product is more impressive to more people. I think that more people will watch that and say, dang, I just saw Dimes do something that I just saw Dimes do a dunk I've never seen anybody else do. And because nobody else has unlocked that animation. And in order to unlock that animation, in order to unlock what he just did, I mean, I know what he had to do. I know what he had to do.
You seriously underestimate how the ability to do things closes up when you add a skill check to it. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know you don't want to hear fantasy examples, but I'm going to make a direct comparison. In Overwatch, if you look at the size of the heads of some of the characters, it's ridiculously impressive to watch Widowmaker snipe Tracer because she's just so skinny, so small, so fast. And when you watch a Widowmaker get jumped on by Tracer, she turns around, grapples behind her, goes in the air, puts her scope down, the Tracer blinks, and she flashes across the screen, and you see that red X, you like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
In 2K, if you added that level of skill check, Dimes would still be the only one doing these things. If you said, you have to cancel this crossover into a behind the back within 2 frames in order to get this animation, and he's doing it every time, the animation would still be as cool as you're saying. He would still be the only one doing it. The difference being, you could do it too if you wasn't a scrub. I don't have to lock it out. I don't have to put a whole game mode or a whole, you know, thing you have to do if it's there, but the skill check is there.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with the skill check. I think that all of those things should be there. It's just about the how do you get there. And I've played many shooters, and I've seen people pull off snipes from so far away that it was just insane. And I'm like, oh my God, they just got, I can't believe he just made that shot. I can't believe she just made that shot. But I contend the difference is there is no other reference point for what you're watching when you're watching Overwatch. Overwatch lives in its own world because it is what it is. 2K will never be separate from the NBA, from the real NBA. So in order for me to excite you, I have to do a little bit of what the NBA does. And the NBA doesn't give everybody an 80 overall and tell them that they got to go and do the best they can do and individualize yourselves with micro stick inputs in order to make yourself look like a superstar. That's just my, you know, that's just the way I see it.
But the NBA does say, I'm gonna give you all the same ball. Y'all have access to the same equipment. The rim is the same height. And when you talk about athleticism, there are so many people in the NBA, bigger and stronger and faster and more explosive than Kyrie Irving. But he's the only Kyrie Irving because of what he can do with his skills.
Yeah, he's the only Kyrie Irving, but it's not that he's not fast. It's not that he isn't.
I mean, not in comparison to.
Yeah, not in comparison to Russell Westbrook or somebody like that.
De'Aaron Fox or
right.
John Wall or.
And like I said, I'm not saying that skills don't matter. Skills on the stick actually matter for sure, because before you become whoever you become, because this is all a process. This is all I mean, my thought of this goes far beyond just sitting down here and hammering it out on the sticks and just seeing who's best. I'm talking about brand building. I'm talking about this is about making the league a success. And I think you're talking about something a little bit different. But I think that what you're talking about, I'm not saying that it could not work at all, and that it would, that it wouldn't make the product better than it already is. I do believe it would, but I think that what I'm talking about is something entirely different, and it's bigger, and it's more special, and it helps. Because to me, I think 2K is going the wrong route trying to emulate a bunch of other esports in some ways. I think in some ways that's the wrong thing, because your product is different. Your product is different, and you have to accentuate the parts of your product that is different. And I don't know that they're doing that right now. So, but
well, I think on that we can both agree.
Yes, yes, I do think that
we gonna agree on something before we
right.
We agree on that. You watching this, Czar? 2K, you suck.
Right.
We go 100 on that.
Right. Well, they must have been entertained by this back and forth, because before we started this, we had like 19 people, and now there's 22. So they stayed and watched and listened to us go back and forth about our archetype for an hour and a half or something to that effect. But I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate everybody watching as always. God bless y'all and peace.